Hello. Um, Good evening. And when I say good evening, I'm talking about this window over here. This is a software called Stellarium. It is a free observatory. It's a simulator. It simulates the sky and the stars. So, we are in Palestine, Texas, and we are gone back in time to September 15th, 1985. That's going to be, bear with me, 7:03 and 47 seconds. And you can see the sun. Oh, sorry about that. You can see the sun. I can select the sun. And we have some information that pops up here. I'm an astronomy nerd. Like, I got bitten by the astronomy bug when I was 12. I entered an essay contest in my elementary school. It was the one with the cat, if anybody of you seen my video. And I won like third place. So the first place got 4 books, got to go down to the bookstore and get 4 books. And then third place got 3 books. Or second place got 3 books. And third place got 2 books. So I got second place. I think I wrote it on like conservation. Something because it was like in the 70s. It was during the first energy crisis. It was more of a political crisis than an energy crisis. But I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, I won, and I picked a book on Alpha Centauri about stars. That's by Isaac Asimov. Okay, so anyway, to get to why are we looking at at an observatory? Well, you see, okay, so I have to tell a story. So one of the things, let's go to the briefly to the calendar here. I'm trying to manipulate the software here to show the. Here we go. All right, so this is a calendar of September. This is hebcal.com. It shows Jewish calendar, and shows the Gregorian. We use the Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar. Okay, so to not get too technical, a solar calendar is locked to the sun, and the sun determines the seasons. And what I mean by that is the seasons are the Earth going around the sun. Okay, doesn't care about the moon. Okay, Earth going around the sun, tilt of the axis. As the Earth goes around the sun, the tilt changes in relation to the sun. I'm just telling you. At one time in the Earth's orbit, it's winter in the northern hemisphere. It's important. Northern and southern hemisphere have different seasons, and so on, right? And so springtime is when we're coming out of winter. We have the equinoxes. I don't know. The equinox is when the day and the night hours are the same. And then the summer solstice is the longest day of the year in terms of daylight hours. That's when the Earth's northern axis is pointing to the sun, and so on. Anyway, okay. Now, we kept the feast days as branch Davidians. I hope I explained this right. Because this is not, it's technical. I don't want to bore everybody, but okay. So we kept the feast days, and it has to do with the moon, the Hebrew calendar or the Jewish calendar, and a lot of ancient Near East calendars, also the Babylonian calendar, are synchronized to the moon. Okay. Now, the way things move around in the sky are not perfectly aligned, right? So our months in the Gregorian calendar are 30 and 31 days, except for February, right? And this is just an accident of history. You could go study the Roman calendar, because it's the Roman calendar. It's the Julian calendar. Julius Caesar, when he took over as the first, essentially, emperor of Rome, really. He didn't call himself that, or a king, but that's what he essentially was. And he was able to use the force of his authority to enact a calendar reform. So essentially, the calendar we use is the Julian calendar. The Gregorian calendar is technically what we use, and that's just a very minor adjustment, which I'm not going to go into. Okay, so the moon, a month or a month, right? It's one cycle of the moon, a month. That's why we call it a month. but our months aren't synchronized to the moon anymore. Okay, because it's a solar calendar, because really being synchronized to the seasons is ultimately more important, right? The seasons are what set the cycle of the year. And so we want December to feel a certain way, and it's cold, and we want June and July to feel a certain way. And if those months were synchronized to the moon, long story short, yeah. Anyway, but however, I will say that the lunar calendar, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The Jewish calendar is synchronized to the seasons too, but it's a bit different. Instead of having leap days, right? So to keep the calendars synchronized, our calendar, synchronized properly to the sun, to the seasons, we have a leap day, right? Every 4 years, we add a day to February, and that keeps things lined up. In fact, that's what the Gregorian calendar reform was about, is the calendar was a little bit off and things had drifted away by the time of I think it was the 14th century, the 15th century. The Pope, astronomers told the Pope, hey, we got a problem. We're 11 days off. And so they had a short month and took 11 days out and changed the calendar, tweaked it a little bit. Tweak the rules concerning leap days to keep the calendar more in alignment. A lunar calendar, instead of leap days, has leap months, and this is important. I'm going to get to, because remember, the title of my video is David Koresh and the moon. I'm serious. You guys know me. I'm not kidding. We're going to talk about this, okay? But we keep the feast days. And as you can see here, we have a Rosh Hashanah. By the way, just as a little historical tidbit, David Koresh's first wife, her initials are ROSH, Rachel Olivia Susanna Howell, when she married Vernon. Vernon Wayne Howell married Rachel Olivia Susanna Howell. And so that's ROSH, and it's Rosh. And Vernon taught that was significant. I think for a while, he taught that was important. Okay, that's a little historical note. All right, well, anyway, here you can see that Erev Rosh Hashanah right here. That's the evening of Rosh Hashanah. So that's the evening. Days in the Jewish calendar always start at evening. So when the sun sets, that's the beginning of the new day. That's the way they reckon it. Okay, so if we're going to keep a new moon, if we're going to keep Rosh Hashanah, which is the first day of the religious year, okay, right here on the 16th of September, then it begins the night before on the 15th. As the sun is setting, we're watching the time, the sun is setting, and then the holy day begins for Rosh Hashanah, which is a holy high day, the first day of the new year, the Jewish year. And I think there's a civil year and a religious year. I think this is the religious year. Okay? Okay. And then Yom Kippur. Now, once you set the first day of the month, right, then you're counting 10 days, and Yom Kippur is 10 days later, right? On the evening of the 24th of September that year, it was Yom Kippur begins at evening. That's the Day of Atonement. Big deal day. And then later on, we have the beginning of what we call the Feast of Tabernacles. It's called Sukkot, Sukkot. And because, again, you've started the month way back here on the 1st, you get to the 14th of Sukkot. And there you go. That establishes the beginning of that day, of that week-long event. Okay? And then October, actually September 30th, if anybody's seen my David Koresh tried to destroy my marriage video, my marriage began, that night was the evening of the 30th, transitioning into the 1st of October. Anyway, the reason why I'm doing this is I'm trying to guide you into my thought process here. I'm trying to remember things that happened around this time, because certain things happened at this time that I want to talk about. There were baptisms. For the first time, we were baptized. We built the big building at Palestine around this time. Rock Hudson died. And again, this is important because David Koresh was talking about Rock Hudson. It was in the news. He died on October 2nd, 1985. As we were building that building, we were discussing Rock Hudson, and because he had AIDS, and David Koresh felt rather compassionate towards Rock Hudson. He briefly, I think, was entertaining the idea of trying to talk to him, but of course I think we realized that would be impossible. Actually, I think Pat Boone was able to talk to him, if I remember correctly. But anyway, we learned that he was sick, and as we were building the building there, so that's why I've got him. The Stellarium software is available at stellarium.org if anybody wants to mess around with it. So there you go. Okay, so now that I've talked a little bit about that, so new moon is supposed to start right when you can see the moon as the sun sets in the evening. So here we are, and we're in Palestine, Texas, as I said. Now this is a preloaded horizon. This is not genuinely Palestine, but we're just going to use it. Pretend that we're out in a field in Palestine instead of the woods, because we couldn't see the sunset very well. But the sun has just set, and as you can see, if I zoom in here, we can see the moon, and the moon is what this is called a new moon. And if I click on the moon, we get lots of information about the moon, all kinds of technical information. But the one I'm looking at is down here. Where is it? Moon age at the bottom. I don't know if you can read that, but I'll read it for you. Moon age, 1.4 days old. It's a waxing crescent. Waxing meaning this crescent here on the moon is growing larger. And the new moon, the evening of the new moon, begins when you can see the moon. You can see this little, and I think most people understand as the moon ages, right? We have a new moon, so the moon has been reborn essentially. And every evening, and I can even simulate that, every evening as the moon gets older, so to speak, let's pull up the time. No, not that. I'm sorry. That's okay, the time. All right, so every evening as the moon gets older, let's advance the day. So right now we're on the 15th, right? Which I showed you on the calendar. This is, oh wow, I just learned something. Okay, so, okay. All right, I need to switch back to okay, so, calm down, David. Okay. Well, okay, so I need to tell you a story. Okay, so like I said, the new moon starts when you can see the moon in the evening. And I know Dana watches my channel. She might remember this when I talk about something here. Okay, so the moon is always orbiting the Earth. It never stops, right? And where the moon is in its orbit around the Earth determines how much light you can see here, this crescent. Okay, because as you notice, as you can see them, if we're looking off toward the east, or I'm sorry, toward the west, David, right here is a big W. The sun is just set in the evening, and the moon is very close to the horizon. And the reason why that is because we've just had what's called an astronomical new moon. Okay? An astronomical new moon is when the moon lines up the closest with the sun. Now, when it lines up 100% perfectly, that's called a solar eclipse. Okay? A solar eclipse is where the moon passes directly in front of the sun, and I saw one in August of 2017. We actually came up here to Oregon to visit my family. We went down south to find the place where it was going to be total, because you have to be in a certain spot. And we saw the moon. We saw the moon cover the sun, and that created an eclipse. That's a new moon. Now, because things aren't perfectly aligned, right? Things are out of whack up in the sky, obviously. It's just all random, sort of. And so the eclipses don't happen every month. Sometimes instead of the moon covering the sun, most of the time it'll be a near miss. It'll get close, but it's still so close that you can't see the moon. It's lost in the glare of the sun. And then as the moon orbits the Earth, right? We're getting, the moon is getting older. So now we're on the 17th, back to the 16th. So see the change in angle in the sky and then the 18th, and it's waxing. The crescent is now getting bigger. Notice how much bigger it is. So as the moon ages, this crescent gets larger. And this is now, this is a 4.7 day old moon. Okay. Now, the trick is that, okay, well, let me just tell the story now. So according to the, so in this particular lunar month, this calendar that we're looking at, notice that the evening of new moon was supposed to be on the 15th of September. Okay? So that is, if you're doing your preparation day to get ready for the holy day, that's your preparation day. You need to get your business done on the 15th of September, and so that you can keep the high holy day on the 16th, Rosh Hashanah, in 1985. Well, what happened was one day, I think this would be around 1982, I guess, or 83 maybe. Perry Jones was in town, and he was doing his business. You know, he was not doing a preparation day. He was just in town doing some business. It was later in the evening, and he looked up in the sky, and he saw the new moon. But the problem is according to the official calendar, and I don't know what month this was or anything. It wasn't 85, obviously. It wasn't this particular Jewish month, because there's 12 of them, right? He saw the new moon, and he realized, wait a minute, we're not expecting new moon to start till tomorrow night. Okay? And it was, so he realizes, if I can see the new moon, then, oh my God, that means new moon is starting now. And this is when he began his idea about that the Jewish calendar is wrong. Okay? Because if I can see the new moon now in the sky, but the Jewish calendar says it doesn't start till tomorrow, then obviously it's wrong. Okay, so that's the idea that Perry Jones came up with. And I think if I remember the story correctly, he ran back to Mount Carmel and, oh my God, because Perry was like that. Like, oh my God, we're going to hell because we're not keeping the new moon, whatever. And so what started to happen was that Perry subscribed to a calendar from the McDonald Observatory in Texas, in West Texas. And it has, in there, it had a little chart of new moons, not astronomical new moons, but the first visible new moon. And I think he even called an astronomer there, and they talked about the moon and the phases and all of this technical stuff I'm going on with you here. So anyway, if you notice, well, let's go back again. Okay, so I want to set the date back to the 15th. And okay. So this particular month, I think we're okay because you see, it wasn't always wrong. Okay, what I just told you, sometimes you would have the Jewish calendar and it would say new moon was starting on a particular day, and then you would look in the sky if you could see the moon, if it wasn't cloudy or something, and it would match up. Okay, there it is. Okay. But the way that it started working from then on, and all through the group, as long as I was there, we had to wait. See, normally, if you wanted to plan your life, oh God, sorry. If you wanted to plan your life, you knew calendars, Jewish calendars. You could get a calendar published. We used to get them from this Jewish group. They published Jewish calendars for religious Jews, and we could plan. Oh, there's going to be a new moon a year from now on this date, and we can make sure not to plan something. But all of a sudden now, Perry's the one in charge of our Jewish calendar, essentially. Okay? He's the one that has to get the calendar. Now, I knew, from the very beginning, that there was going to come a day where there's going to be a problem with this. Because as much as Perry understood about it, and he understood some, I understood even more. And I was like, this isn't going to work. Anyway, sure enough, there came a day in Palestine, Texas, when we were there, and this is when the Hawaiians had come into the group. Okay, now some of them were still living in Hawaii. Okay, so first of all, the one problem is Hawaii is... oh God, I'm getting a little tweak in my back right now. I'm sorry. Aging sucks. Hawaii is west of Palestine, Texas, right? Okay, so when the sun sets in Palestine, the sun hasn't set in Hawaii. Okay? Between the time the sun sets in Palestine and the sun sets in Hawaii, the moon has time to grow older. Okay? In other words, what I'm saying is that this age of the moon down here in the bottom of my screen, moon age, 1.4 days old, 0.1 days is 2.4 hours. So by the time the sun sets in Hawaii, it could be another, how many time zones away is that? Let's see, that's, you're in Palestine, then you go to Mountain, Pacific, and then I think there's 2 more time zones out. So like 4 time zones away. That's approximately 4 hours. So the moon has approximately another 0.2. So by the time the moon sets in Hawaii, it's already gotten a bit older, and that means that this crescent here is a little bit wider and a bit brighter. And that what determines whether you can see the moon or not. Now, the thing about this whole process is it's highly variable. Where the moon is going to be at any particular time, at any particular place in the world, at any particular new moon is always changing. And it's always a roll of the dice as whether are we going to see it or not at any particular day. Because you've got the glare. You can see the glare of the sun is still lighting up the horizon. As time progresses, I can advance the time a little bit here, and you can see that it's getting darker. And meanwhile, as it's getting darker, the moon is going lower. So I don't know how many of you are catching on to this, but this is it's a really annoying way to set your calendar. Are we going to see the moon? Now, we didn't run out and go look for the moon. It was the calendar that Perry received from McDonnell Observatory, and he would get his little calendar and he would see the dates, and then he would set the dates. And so we would only know the new moons maybe 3 months into the future. Okay, it was really annoying. I used to complain to Mark about this, Mark Bro, because he was a technical guy, and we both agreed we should know new moons into the big end of time. It's a mathematical calculation. And the thing that we have to sit here and wait for Perry, get his calendar and find out new moons was extremely annoying. And it was never solved because Vernon, for some reason, trusted Perry with this, except for even now. Okay, let's back to Hawaii. So again, we had set the new moon. Perry had gotten his calendar and we're all ready. And then what do you know? The Hawaiians who now know about the new moon, they're in Hawaii. And they're out. Now remember, they got a clear shot of the ocean horizon. Okay, so they don't have hills and trees in the way. Okay, they're looking out from Hawaii out to the beautiful ocean, and they can see the sun setting. And so that's a true horizon, right? It's the ocean horizon, which is essentially a true horizon. There's nothing in the way. And sure enough, they saw the new moon. So the same thing that happened to Perry that I described, all of a sudden the Hawaiians are like, oh my God, the new moon. And they called Palestine Camp, hey, we can see the new moon. And for Perry, it calculated it's going to be the next day. But oh no, now Perry's calendar is wrong. And now, and when that happened, I shook my head and I said, I knew this was going to happen because I understood that. I understood that seeing the new moon depends on where you are, and and I hope I kind of illustrated this. Okay. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that when I'm trying to figure out, since our lives revolved around the calendar, the Jewish calendar, and not only that, but a special one, depending on Perry and his little McDonnell Observatory calendar, I have to go and look at my simulator here, my astronomical simulator, and look at the calendar. So what I'm doing here is I'm going, okay, I'm trying to estimate something. I'm looking at the first day. The new moon should be visible on the 15th of September, right? And I'm trying to say, okay, would Perry's little calendar from McDonnell Observatory that he got back in 1985 tell him? Because I have it set for September 15th, and the sun is setting, and there's the moon, and the age of the moon is 1.4 days. And I'm thinking, yeah, I think in this case, that would be correct because the previous evening, the age of the moon would be about 0.4 days, which is only about, because that's when, they have contests on who can photograph the youngest moon, right? The tiniest sliver. How, in other words, from the time of the astronomical moon, as the moon begins to age and that sliver of light begins to grow every night, where in the world can someone find that moon and photograph it when it's the most tiniest little sliver of light? Okay? And that's like a young moon. Like some people have caught the moon when it was just maybe like 20 hours old. It's very hard to see because it's very low on the horizon. Conditions have to be just right. Obviously, the weather has to be right. all these things. And so in this case, I'm looking at this and I'm saying the moon's about 1.4 days old. That's 24 plus, let's just say 3 times 4 is 12. So we got about a 32-hour-old moon, 36 hours old. And yeah, that makes sense because the next day, obviously, it's going to be even way older. But it should have been visible easily in the sky. If you could see the horizon and were looking sharp, you could see it. So I'm going to say that in this case, I'm going back in time. I'm trying to figure out if we kept the feast days on the same days as the official Jewish calendar, because this determines the first day of the month. So I'm saying, yes, I agree. David Bunz uses his astronomy simulator, his moon simulator, sky simulator, to figure out the age of the moon in Palestine, Texas at this time. And I'm saying, okay, I agree. This is the first day of the month. And so that means we did keep the Day of Atonement on the 24th of September. And we did keep the day of the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles started on the evening of the 29th of September, and so on. Ooh. Whew. Now, if there's some things you don't understand, you can leave questions in the comments. Okay. Now, and then I'll just finish with this. So I said David Koresh and the moon because, so what happened is Perry started collecting these calendars and watching the moon very closely. Now, and this is another thing that went wrong. I didn't anticipate this, but when I got the phone call, yeah. So let me flash forward to the next year here. Okay, so 1986 is the year that the polygamy began. And the polygamy began with the crafting of a narrative. Vernon Howell, still Vernon Howell at this time, is crafting a narrative to shape around the beginning of polygamy. Again, this is hindsight. I didn't know this at the time. This is what I know now. David Koresh is crafting a narrative around the beginning of polygamy, and he's looking for signs. He's looking for something happening that he can then say, look, see, this is ordained by God, so on and so forth. I think what must have happened is Perry told him that because Perry doesn't understand things very well. So notice here we have Adar 1. Let's let me see. Jewish calendar. Well, you know what? Let's just ask ChatGPT. What is the Jewish leap month? Here we go. Okay, so it's called Adar. The leap month is Adar 2. Okay, so I'll just read this. We need to know this, so just bear with me. In the Hebrew calendar, which is used by Jewish communities to determine the dates of religious services, there is a system of intercalation to align the lunar and solar cycles. I told you about that. If you don't do that, things are going to get out of whack really fast. This intercalation involves adding an extra month known as Adar 2 in certain years. This additional month is commonly referred to as a leap month. The Hebrew calendar is primarily lunar, with each month beginning at the new moon. However, since the lunar year is approximately 354 days long, in other words, 12 lunar months add up to 354 days, right? Well, we know a year is 365 and a quarter days. Really, that's where the leap day comes from. You have a quarter extra day every year. You take 4 quarters, you add them together to a whole day. So every 4 years, we add a leap day. With the Hebrew calendar, we have to add a leap month every so many years. So the lunar year is approximately 354 days long, about 11 days shorter than the solar year. The Hebrew calendar would gradually drift out of sync with the seasons if no adjustments were made. To address this, the Hebrew calendar adds a leap month 7 times in the 19-year cycle. This ensures that the major holidays such as Passover, Rosh Hashanah remain in their appropriate seasons. Okay, you can't keep Passover in the wintertime. It's just going to roll back around. It's, you know, I don't know, this will, okay. All right, you saw enough of this. Okay, so back to the calendar. All right, so notice here in 1986 we have Adar 1, and then there is an Adar 2 this year. So what I think happened is as Perry's collecting his calendars and he's keeping track of the months, he noticed this. That, wait a minute, we've already had 12 months, and the first month we need to be back at Passover again. And I don't think that he understood this, what I just read to you, that we need to have a leap month. Now, I want to remind you, this calendar, this lunar calendar is really old. It's thousands of years old. Astronomers, Babylonian astronomers, ancient astronomers figured all this stuff out a long time ago. They were pretty smart. They would watch the skies and measure things and use calculations to figure these calendars out. And, you know, even though they didn't have telescopes and all of our science today, they still had a lot of amazing computations and technology. They could figure this stuff out. Don't want to do much cursing on my channel. I'm trying to clean up my potty mouth here. Anyway. So, yeah. So he must have told Vernon. See, because normally what that would mean is we would be, if Adar 2 would technically be Nisan, the next month after Adar, right, is Nisan. And Nisan is the Passover month. But if you stick an Adar 2 in there, then, yeah, you're keeping, so basically these are years that have 13 months, okay? And it's a cycle. You got to stick a month in there every so often. It's all calculated out so that, okay. So then I got a phone call from Vernon Howell. And I was living in California with my wife at my parents' house in Highland Park, living quite the free life, really. We were sharing the house with my parents, and it was just, I think at this point it was just me and my wife. Michelle Jones lived with us for a while, and so did Gabriella Hauptman for a while. But most of the people had moved out and gone to San Bernardino because David Koresh wanted to be close to Loma Linda, California. That's where he met, for example, later in the year, he would meet Mark Bro. Okay, in fact, I think Mark Bro might have already been met at this point. Okay, anyway, David Koresh calls me up, and he wants to know about this. What's up with this Adar 2? He's already rather defensive. I don't know why he called me if he had already made up his mind, because he told me, well, I don't want your science, he said with kind of a sneer. I mean, I can't mouth off to him, right? Because that's what I would do normally. Well, if you don't want science, then why the hell are you calling me? But I didn't do that. You know, he had already dressed me down for having science books. I haven't told that story yet. Anyway, I'll tell that some other time. He wants to know what's going on with this leap month thing, because Perry has probably told him, why are we not keeping because he's already, see, the way he's probably thinking is because Perry's already found one problem. And also remember, this is before the Hawaii thing, where the Hawaiians saw the new moon and like, oh my God, the new moon, and we found out Perry was wrong. This is before that. So Perry's thinking, well, if they're wrong about the new moon day, right, then maybe they're wrong about this leap month thing. And Vernon called me, and I told him what this says right here. I told him exactly this. Okay? Essentially, this is what I told him. This paragraph that ChatGTP out is telling me now is essentially what I told him. I says, if you don't adjust the lunar calendar, I told him you'll start keeping Passover in winter time, and eventually, and every year it'll keep getting earlier. So eventually Passover won't be in the spring anymore. It'll be in the winter, and then it'll be in the autumn, and then it'll be in the summer, and then it'll wrap back around to spring again. Because if you lose 11 days every year, right? 10 years is 110 days. 30 years would be 330 days, right? So every year you'd lose 11 days, and keeping Passover at any other time other than harvest time, because it's the wave sheaf ceremony, which is picking the barley crop. I told him all this stuff, and he still went to Palestine during the month of Adar 2 to keep the Passover in Adar 2. Because he was, I'm going to be polite and just say that he thought that it was extremely urgent to get to Palestine so that he could give seed to Karen Doyle. Okay? And he pretended that, God was talking to him during this time. I haven't told this story yet, but anyway, I'm going to close up here. And I hope that you understand something about calendars and new moons and our history with it and all of that. And it's taken me, how long? It's taken me over 40 minutes to explain all this. And yeah, it's tied to the polygamy start and all of that. And I'll make another video discussing that. What happened to the Assyria video I announced? Sometimes I go to record and I sit down and I record something and then I'm done. And then I think about it and I go, you know what? That was crap. So I don't do it. So if I announce that I'm going to do something and then it doesn't turn out, the reason why is because I've been thinking about it. And I'm like, you know what? That's not the way I want to talk about that, or that's not the way I want to present that. And then I change. So if anybody sees things change very quickly from what I announce to what I publish, that's why. It's not because I'm trying to jerk anybody around. Obviously, probably people know that already. It's not because I'm just being a weirdo. It's because I'm trying to think about what I'm going to talk. This here, what I talked about just now, I literally did not know I was going to talk about this specific thing until just maybe 10 minutes before I began recording. So anyway, I don't know how many would care, but Stellarium is a lot of fun because you can set your location anywhere in the world. It's a bit complicated to learn, but like I said, I set the time. And there you can even see Saturn. And you can even zoom in to the planets. Like you can click on Saturn. It'll tell you about Saturn. And if you zoom in close enough, you can, obviously it's all simulated. But yeah. So there's Saturn. The reason why Saturn is moving is because the Earth is rotating. And as the Earth rotates, things are moving across the sky. And this is assuming a fixed position. There's Titan, the moon of Saturn. And so on and so forth. So yeah, really interesting, right? I remember when I was a little boy, we went to the Griffith Observatory, and I saw Saturn for the first time through a telescope when I was about 8. So anyway, yeah, I will probably use Stellarium again when I tell my Pluto story, David Koresh Pluto story, just for kicks. So anyway, we're going to close here. And I hope people found this informative. Again, if something you don't understand, leave a question in the comments. I'll explain. And I know this is a technical subject, probably raise some questions for people. So anyway, Signing off for now. Take care. Next video, I think, is going to be the part 2 of our foundation. I hope. I don't know. I have to be in the right mood sometimes. I'm working a lot now because I get unlimited overtime on my new job. Because of it's a shipyard. Okay, so there's so much work to do. The ships come in, they need to be fixed. I do technical things with AutoCAD and SolidWorks and Rhino 3D. Ships, say a ship runs into a friggin' rock, right? The hull is smashed in. We got to scan with a high-tech laser scanner, and we get that information and we pull it into the CAD, and we got to remodel a new hull, and then we got to put, oh my God, it's crazy. But there's so much work. And we do cruise ships, and we do military, and on and on and on. I'm working 2 hours overtime every day. I get to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. I get off at 2:30. Sometimes I have to pick up my granddaughter who goes to school right across the street, and I have to do all this stuff. And oh, my back is still, oh God. And then I'm working now 5 hours on Saturday mornings because my wife is asleep. Like, her sleep schedule is so weird compared to mine. And so I can work like every week. I'm shooting for about 15 overtime hours, which is a lot of money because that's time and a half. And so I'm trying to rake in the cash to pay off some bills. And so this year is going to be. But anyway, I still have free time to do videos. So the schedule might be a little wonky from now on. But anyway, I hope that people enjoyed Stellarium. As we can see here, it's now almost 8 o'clock on an evening in where did the moon go? Yeah, it's like the moon is like getting really close there. See, it's behind that tree. So you wouldn't, in the moon, the sun hasn't even completely, the glow of the sun hasn't even went away yet. And that's the new moon, right? I can't even click. Oh, there it is. I got it. So I can click on the new moon behind the tree. You'd have to probably walk over to the side here if you still wanted to see the moon on the horizon at this time of the night. And I just clicked on a satellite by mistake. That's yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in the sky. It even simulates satellites, stars. That's Arcturus, one of the brightest stars in the sky. Anyway, I'm going on too long about this. This is a lot of fun, actually, this thing, at least for me. Some people are like, oh my God. I don't care. So anyway, take care. Until next time.